I moved into what I thought was just another quiet suburban neighborhood, until I met Karen. You know the type, loud, nosy, and convinced she runs the entire block. She had her own fake HOA rules and a pair of wannabe cops who patrolled like they owned the place. Too bad for her. She had no idea who she was messing with. I'm an FBI agent, and I don't take threats lightly. One morning, I woke up to a thunderous pounding on my door, so loud the windows rattled. Still half asleep, I stumbled to the entryway and peeked through the peephole. Two people stood there in matching uniforms with HOA police printed in bold letters. Their badges looked like they came from a party store. I cracked the door open. "Can I help you?" The tall man with a chiseled jaw glared at me. "We're here on official business. Your property has multiple violations. We need to inspect your garage." I frowned. "What are you talking about? There's nothing illegal in my garage." The woman beside him, shorter, sharp eyes, snapped, "Don't make this harder. We have authority from the HOA." That word made me pause. HOA? No warrant, no police insignia, just this cheap cosplay of authority. In a calm voice, I said, "I'm an FBI agent. If you have real cause, show me proper papers." That made the tall one smirk. Being FBI doesn't excuse you from neighborhood codes. Then I saw her, Karen, standing behind them with that smug grin plastered on her face. Of course, she was the one behind this circus. "Karen," I said, stepping outside, "what's going on?" She folded her arms. "Just ensuring the rules are followed," she said sweetly. "You can't expect special treatment because of your job." The fake officers nodded like obedient henchmen. "We have reports of strange activity in your garage," the woman said. I almost laughed. "Strange activity? Like what?" Karen shrugged. "I hear noises at night. Could be anything. Hazardous materials, maybe something illegal." I clenched my jaw. "That's nonsense, and you know it. This is harassment." The tall officer pulled out a flimsy paper, no seal, no signature, declaring me under investigation by the HOA police. "That's not an official document," I said flatly. "You have no right to enter my property." Karen sighed dramatically. "You sure you want to argue? I can add your refusal to the list of violations." My patience was hanging by a thread. "Since when does the HOA send out its own police force?" The shorter one flashed a plastic badge. "We have new powers now." "Step aside." I shook my head. "No. Come back with real law enforcement and a valid warrant." The man stepped closer. "Don't test us." Inside, my anger boiled, but I kept it under control. "If you try to enter my home," I said, "you'll be the ones facing charges." Karen crossed her arms. "Everyone knows you think you're above the rules." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. My boss's name flashed across the screen, which instantly made my stomach sink. "Give me a moment," I said, stepping back into the house. The tall man barked, "We're not done here!" I ignored him and answered the call. "Get to the office now," my boss said sharply. "We've got a problem." My heart skipped. "Is this about some complaint against me?" He hesitated. "We'll talk in person." When I returned to the door, the fake cops were still there, Karen looming behind them like some self-appointed queen. "I have to go," I said firmly. "We'll deal with this later." "If you leave," the woman said, "we'll mark you as uncooperative." Karen's grin widened. "You sure you want your neighbors to see you running away?" "Karen," I said, my patience cracking, "you know you can't arrest me." "I'm not arresting you," she replied. "They are." The tall officer raised a pair of plastic zip ties. "We can do this the easy way or the hard way." I took a breath, forcing calm. "Put those down. Impersonating a law officer is a federal crime." Karen chuckled. "Maybe you should listen, Agent. They have the power to write you up." I stepped forward, lowering my voice. "A fake citation means nothing." The tall man waved the zip ties in my face. "You want to find out if these are fake too?" It clicked. They were trying to bait me into reacting. A setup. I exhaled slowly. I'm leaving for my real job. Get off my property, Karen smirked. The HOA has eyes everywhere. Yeah, I said, but you sure aren't it. They finally backed away, but not before the woman snapped a photo of me on her phone. Smile for the records, Karen said with a wink. I waited until they were off my lawn, then slammed the door. My phone buzzed again, a text from my boss. Hurry! My nerves were fried, but I grabbed my keys and left. As I pulled out of the driveway, I spotted the fake cruiser at the end of the street, lights off. Karen's car was gone, no doubt spreading her version of the story around the neighborhood. By the time I reached the FBI field office, my mind was spinning. My boss was waiting, arms crossed. You took your time, he snapped. Why are local authorities complaining about your behavior? I blinked. What? That wasn't local authorities. Those were impersonators. He sighed, rubbing his temples. Well, someone filed reports saying you resisted an inspection. It's already on my desk. Karen, I muttered. She staged the whole thing. He looked tired. Listen, I can't do much if official complaints keep coming. Keep calm, prove they're fake, or internal affairs will step in. As I left his office, my phone buzzed again. This time, a text from a blocked number. Better watch your step. We know who you are. I gripped the phone so hard I thought it might crack. This wasn't a prank anymore. They were trying to ruin me. All day I couldn't focus. Even my co-workers gave me uneasy looks, whispering behind my back. Before heading home, one of them, Davis, pulled me aside. Word is you're on thin ice, he said quietly. And that neighbor of yours? She's bragging about getting you in trouble. I clenched my jaw. Thanks, Davis. By the time I got home, the sun was setting. A black SUV sat parked near my house, tinted windows reflecting nothing. My pulse spiked. I parked, walked inside, and locked the door tight. Seconds later, an email notification popped up from Internal Affairs. They wanted my explanation for the incident with the HOA security detail. I dropped onto the couch, head spinning. Somehow, Karen had linked her fake patrol with official channels. Now my career, my whole reputation, was on the line. The next morning, that black SUV was still there, engine off, windows tinted, watching. I tried to ignore it, but the feeling wouldn't leave my gut. Whoever was behind it, Karen, her fake officers, or something worse, wanted me to feel trapped. I called the real HOA using the number from an old newsletter. No answer. Just a recorded message about technical difficulties. So I sent an email instead, subject line, urgent, possible impersonation. A few seconds later, it bounced back. Undeliverable. Karen had shut down every line of communication. Frustrated, I reached out to a local police contact, Officer Alvarez, a no-nonsense guy who'd worked with the Bureau before. Fake. Badges, bogus citations, and a neighbor leading the charge, I told him. He sounded skeptical but agreed to look into the fake HOA police car's plates. If that vehicle belongs to a private firm, he said, they can't act as law enforcement. As I waited for his call back, the neighborhood turned cold. People whispered behind fences, side-eyed me when I passed. One morning, my neighbor Tamara, one of the few still talking to me, knocked on my door, pale and shaking. They left this on my porch, she said, holding up a notice demanding a fine for unapproved paint colors. I scanned the letter. Same fake seal, same bogus threats. Don't pay them, I said. This is a scam. Tears welled in her eyes. But what if it's real? I can't afford to lose my home. I wished I could reassure her. But deep down, I wasn't sure who would protect us anymore. At work, things weren't any better. My boss called me in again. I'm getting more reports about your conflicts with local authorities, he said, tapping a folder on his desk. I leaned forward. Those authorities aren't real. I have proof they're impersonators, he sighed. If they're private security, I can't make this go away. Higher-ups are asking questions. It was like quicksand. The more I fought, the deeper I sank. That evening, as I pulled into my driveway, I spotted Karen standing in her yard, arms folded, watching me. I walked over, anger boiling under my skin. "We need to talk," I said. She smiled like she'd been waiting for this. "Go ahead." "You've turned this neighborhood into a circus," I said. "You're terrorizing people with fake cops and phony fines. Why?" Karen tilted her head. "It's not personal. People forget that rules exist. I'm just reminding them." "By threatening them?" She shrugged. "They pay the fines. They follow the rules. Seems to be working." I clenched my fists. "What's your end game?" "End game?" She smiled faintly. "I'm just cleaning up the neighborhood. You're the only one causing trouble." Before I could respond, one of her officers walked up, the tall one from before. "Move along," he ordered. "We're conducting business with Miss Karen." "You have no legal authority here," I shot back. He smirked. "We're all the authority we need." I stepped back, not wanting to give them an excuse to twist the story again. Karen gave me a smug smile as they walked off together. That night, I went through my old HOA paperwork. Buried deep inside, I found something, a reference to a proposed security program years ago. Karen's name was on it. She'd tried to push for a private enforcement group before. The community rejected it. Now she just made her own. A chill ran down my spine. If she could hijack an entire neighborhood, who else might be backing her? A few days later, Alvarez finally called back. "That plate belongs to a private security outfit," he said. "But there's no record of any contract with your HOA. They're operating illegally." Relief and anger hit me all at once. "That's proof they're fakes," I said. "How do we tie it to Karen?" He hesitated. "We'll need official complaints, written statements. Otherwise, it's your word against theirs," I sighed. "My neighbors are too scared to speak up." "Then find someone who isn't," he said. Easier said than done. Fear was Karen's weapon, and she wielded it well. Meanwhile, Internal Affairs called me in for questioning. A woman from the review board sat across from me, tapping her pen. "Agent," she said, "we've received reports about your behavior with local authorities." "They're not authorities," I said firmly. "They're impersonators," she arched a brow. "We'll be reviewing all angles." I walked out of there with my stomach in knots. Even though I was the victim, I looked like a liability. A few days later, I came home to find an envelope taped to my front door. It had a fake HOA seal stamped on the front. Inside, a notice claimed I'd violated Community Ordinance 301, whatever that was, and owed a fine or further corrective measures would be taken. My patience snapped. I called Karen, left a furious voicemail telling her to stop harassing me. An hour later, my phone buzzed. "Blocked number. Don't threaten Karen again," a voice hissed. "We know your boss. We can make your life difficult." The line went dead. That night, I stood by the window, watching the quiet street. Everything looked normal. Porch lights, trimmed lawns, a perfect suburb, but it wasn't perfect anymore. It was poisoned. I was trapped in a game where the rules kept changing, and Karen was always one move ahead. Then, an email popped up from a colleague. "Heads up. Internal review might launch soon. Rumors are spreading." Great. Another fire to put out. I was still thinking about that message when I saw something move outside, that same black SUV, parked across the street. I shut the blinds and sat in the dark. Heart pounding. If Karen's reach was this deep, if she had help beyond the block, I needed to find out who was pulling her strings. Days passed. Every time I stepped outside, I felt eyes on me, from behind curtains, from parked cars. One afternoon, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. A gravelly voice said, "Stop digging." Or else, the line cut. On my way back from the store later, I found a flyer tucked under my windshield wiper. It read, "HOA police volunteers needed. Meeting at Karen Garrett's residence." At the bottom, a membership fee to cover uniform costs. My blood ran cold. She wasn't just running a scam, she was recruiting. If even a few neighbors joined, she'd have her own neighborhood army. That night, I spread all my evidence on the dining table. Flyers, fake citations, Tamara's letter. A pattern started to emerge. Each step Karen took built on the last, choking out the real HOA's authority until only her fake system remained. It wasn't random. It was a takeover, but one question haunted me. Who was helping her? The voice on the phone, the black SUV, it felt bigger than just one suburban tyrant. I called Tamara and asked her to come over. She showed up clutching an envelope. I found old newsletters, she said. Karen started small, organizing yard sales, block parties. But look at this. She pointed to a line in one of them. Local security guidelines will be enforced for the safety of all residents. Karen's signature was right below it. She's been planning this for years, I said, shaking my head. Tamara's voice trembled. Do you think any of this is legal? No, I said quietly. But nobody's stopping her. The real HOA board had vanished. The police couldn't act without solid evidence. And my own agency thought I was the problem. I had one card left to play. Alvarez. The next morning, I drove to the station with a thick folder of everything I had. Flyers, fake notices, license plates, even Tamara's testimony. Alvarez led me into his cramped office. Sorry for the mess, he muttered. I dropped the folder on his desk. This is all of it. She's building her own police force. He flipped through the papers, whistling under his breath. This is bigger than I thought, he said. But tying it to her will be tough. She's on half the documents, I pointed out. You have witnesses. Use them, he frowned. We need signed statements, not whispers. I rubbed my temples. They're terrified, Alvarez. She's got them believing she's untouchable, he sighed. And she might be, if the right people are backing her. Then he paused, scrolling through his computer. That SUV you mentioned? It's registered to a private security firm tied to an out-of-state corporation. Could be a shell company. My stomach turned. So she's got funding. He nodded grimly. Looks like it. As I left the station, my phone buzzed again. A text from my boss. We need to talk. Be here first thing tomorrow. I gripped the steering wheel tight. If this was another complaint, Karen had just leveled up her attack. That night, I barely slept. Every sound outside felt like another threat. Around 2 a.m., I heard a car door slam. I crept to the window, saw a tall figure standing by the curb, staring at my house. For a second, I thought it was Karen. Then they climbed into a car and drove off. My pulse didn't settle for the rest of the night. The next morning, I dragged myself into the FBI office running on caffeine and adrenaline. My boss was waiting at his door, face like stone. This is bad, he muttered, motioning me inside. I sat down. What happened now? He dropped a file on the desk, thick, full of reports. All of these came in overnight. Complaints from your neighbors, accusing you of threats, harassment, even property damage. I froze. Property damage? That's insane, he nodded grimly. I know, but it's official statements. Signed, dated, and filed. My mind spun. Karen had actually convinced my neighbors to sign lies against me. I believe you, my boss said quietly. But the higher-ups see a pattern. If this keeps going, internal affairs will move in hard. I took a deep breath. Then give me a chance to prove those complaints are fake. The people behind them aren't real law enforcement, he sighed. You've got a little time, but not much. I walked out of that office feeling like the walls were closing in. Karen wasn't just ruining my reputation. She was dismantling it piece by piece. When I got home later that evening, the fake HOA cruiser was parked right outside my house again. Lights off, engine humming. I approached it, every instinct screaming that this was a trap. A window rolled down just an inch. Back off, a voice growled. You'll regret it. I clenched my fists but didn't respond. The car pulled away slowly, vanishing down the street. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't letting Karen win. The following day, I walked into FBI headquarters with my pulse racing. I'd been summoned to a formal inquiry. The big one. A panel of higher-ups was waiting in a conference room. My boss stood in the back, arms crossed, looking uneasy, As I sat down, an older agent cleared his throat. "We're here to address multiple complaints against you," he said. "You've allegedly threatened neighborhood authorities and refused lawful inspections." "Those authorities are fake," I said, keeping my voice steady. "They're part of a private security scam." A stern woman at the table lifted a file. "We have sworn statements from 10 residents claiming otherwise. They describe you as aggressive and unstable." My blood boiled. They were coerced. "I have evidence." But before I could finish, the conference door opened, and in walked Karen. She wasn't wearing her usual smug smile or suburban getup. She was in a tailored suit, carrying a sleek briefcase. My stomach dropped. "What is she doing here?" I demanded. One of the agents replied calmly, "Miss Garrett has submitted evidence on behalf of the local enforcement group." I turned to my boss, but his shocked face told me everything. He didn't see this coming either. Karen walked right up to the table like she owned the room. "Good morning," she said smoothly. "I represent our community's interests. I'm here to clarify a few misunderstandings." She opened her briefcase and began laying out neatly labeled folders. "These contain reports from our neighborhood watch, documenting noise complaints, suspicious activity, and property damage linked to Agent Miller's address." My chest tightened. "That's a lie," I said. Karen didn't even look at me. "We asked him multiple times to cooperate with our volunteer police program, but he refused. We only wanted to ensure safety for our residents." The panelists exchanged glances. I leaned forward. "She's lying. She started this entire scheme months ago. She's using fake citations and threats to extort money from people." The woman on the panel raised an eyebrow. "Do you have proof of this, agent?" My mouth went dry. "Not with me. But I've emailed copies of the forms to my superiors." Karen shook her head delicately. "We have no record of that." "Perhaps he's confused." Her tone was perfect. Calm, patronizing, confident. Then came the twist that made my heart stop. The older agent turned to her. "Before we proceed, Miss Garrett, we should disclose your family connection." Karen gave a small, polite nod. "Of course. My uncle is the deputy director of this bureau. I tried to resolve this quietly, but when Agent Miller's behavior escalated, I had to escalate too." The room went dead silent. My stomach flipped. "The deputy director." That explained everything. The bounced emails, the dead HOA number, the way her reports reached headquarters overnight. She had power, real, untouchable power. One of the panelists cleared his throat. "Given the relationship, we'll ensure impartiality. But these are serious allegations." "Serious?" I said, trying not to lose it. "She's weaponizing her uncle's position to run a fake police force." "She's blackmailing the whole neighborhood." Karen frowned, all false innocence. "We only encouraged order. The residents wanted safety. It's tragic that Agent Miller chose hostility instead of cooperation. Every word she spoke was poison, and she knew exactly what she was doing." By the time the inquiry ended, the decision was clear. Internal Affairs would open a full investigation, not just into Karen's group, but me. Karen smiled faintly as she gathered her things. On her way out, she leaned close and whispered, "Better watch your step." I stood there frozen, jaw tight, rage simmering under my skin. My boss caught up with me in the hallway. "I didn't know she was connected to the deputy director," he said quietly. "That complicates everything." "Complicates?" I said, trying not to explode. "She's untouchable now." "Not untouchable," he said, lowering his voice. "But close. Stay calm. Gather real evidence. Something that even her uncle can't bury." I nodded, barely hearing him. My pulse thundered in my ears. When I finally reached my car, I sat there in silence, staring at my badge. For the first time in years, it felt meaningless. I was an FBI agent who couldn't even stop a neighborhood tyrant with a family connection. That night, I drove home on autopilot, headlights cutting through the dark. By the time I turned onto my street, most houses were glowing softly, families eating dinner, kids watching TV, like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I parked and stepped out, scanning the block. The fake cruiser was gone, but I could feel it. The eyes, the judgment, the fear. My phone buzzed. A text from Tamara. They're at my door. I'm scared. I didn't even think. I ran. When I reached her house, the fake HOA officers were already on her porch pounding on the door. Open up, or we'll mark this as another violation, one shouted. I stepped out of the shadows. You want to rethink that? They turned, startled. Oh, it's you again, the tall one growled. I'm FBI, I said, flashing my badge. Leave her alone, the shorter one sneered. That line doesn't work anymore. We've got friends in high places? Yeah, I said. So I've heard. Tamara cracked the door open, terrified. Please, she whispered. Just go. The tall officer pulled a form from his clipboard. Sign this statement saying your friend's been harassing the neighborhood and will leave you alone. They were trying to turn her against me. I stepped forward. Back off. She's signing nothing. The tall one shoved me. Careful, agent. One wrong move and we'll file assault charges. I steadied myself. Impersonating law enforcement is a federal crime. You're the ones who'll be in cuffs, he glared. You won't get that chance. Before things could spiral, a voice called out from behind us. Calm, commanding. What's going on here? I turned and felt a rush of relief. Alvarez. He must have been off duty, checking up on the neighborhood. He approached, badge out. Ma'am, he said to Tamara, are these men trespassing? She nodded quickly. They won't leave. Alvarez looked at the two fake officers. Show me ID. The tall one flashed his cheap badge. Alvarez didn't blink. That's not official. Driver's license. Now. They hesitated. I said now, Alvarez repeated. The two exchanged glances. Then one stammered. We're authorized by the HOA. Authorized or not, Alvarez said. You're harassing a homeowner who told you to leave. Step away from the door. He radioed for backup. That did it. The fake officers turned pale and bolted for their cruiser. We watched them speed off down the street. Alvarez sighed. I got their plates. We'll see what we can do. Tamara was shaking. They wanted me to sign something saying you were the problem, she whispered. It's a bluff, I said. They've got nothing real to stand on. Even as I said it, I wasn't sure I believed myself anymore. Karen's reach went further than anyone expected. And if Alvarez hadn't shown up, who knows what those men would have done. That night, I got home and collapsed on the couch. My phone buzzed again, another text from an unknown number. You're out of time. Cooperate or lose everything. The words made my blood run cold. Karen wasn't bluffing anymore. She had the neighborhood, the fake cops, and now the FBI itself, all wrapped around her finger. If I didn't find hard proof soon, I'd lose my badge, and maybe more than that. The next morning, I found a slip of paper stuffed into my mailbox. It said only one thing. Meeting tonight. Community center, be there. No name, no logo, just the same tone Karen loved. Commanding, smug, and anonymous. Part of me knew it was a trap, but another part, the FBI agent part, saw opportunity. If Karen was calling a meeting, she'd be in public, talking, maybe bragging, and if I could record what she said, maybe I'd finally have what I needed to expose her. I tucked the note into my pocket and texted Alvarez. Community meeting tonight. She'll be there. His reply came fast. Be careful. Call if it goes bad. That was all I needed. That night, I slipped a small recording device into my jacket, double-checked my phone's audio recorder, and drove to the community center. The parking lot was packed. Rows of cars lined the street. Inside, the air buzzed with nervous chatter. Almost everyone in the neighborhood had shown up. Karen stood near the front, wearing her usual smug smile, a stack of papers in hand. Behind her, two of her so-called HOA officers stood guard, arms crossed, fake badges gleaming under the fluorescent lights. She spotted me as I entered but didn't flinch. In fact, her smile widened. I took a seat near the back, hood up, voice recorder running. Karen stepped up to the small podium, microphone squealing for attention. Good evening, everyone, she began, her tone overly cheerful. Thank you for coming. I know things have been tense lately, but we're here to restore order to our community. A few people clapped. Most didn't. As you all know, she continued, Our neighborhood has faced vandalism, noise complaints, and rule breaking. That's why I formed the new HOA police, to keep us safe and protect property values. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some neighbors nodded. Others shifted uncomfortably. Karen beamed. I know a few people have resisted these changes. But once they see how effective our system is, they'll thank us. Her eyes flicked to me. Just for a second. That was enough. I stood up. Effective? I said loudly. You mean illegal? The room went silent. Karen blinked, smile freezing on her face. Excuse me? I took a few steps forward. You're running a fake police force, extorting your neighbors, issuing bogus fines and threats, and now you're holding public meetings to recruit more victims? A wave of whispers broke out. Karen gripped the podium tighter. That's not true, she said, voice trembling slightly. We're a volunteer group dedicated to safety. Then show us your authorization, I said. Show us one legitimate document signed by the real HOA or any legal authority. She faltered. We don't need signatures. The community gave us approval. No, I said. You gave yourself approval. I pulled out my phone and held up the screen. This is a record from Officer Alvarez, local police. The so-called HOA police vehicle, registered to a private security firm. No contract, no license, no legal jurisdiction. You're not protecting anyone, Karen. You're running a scam. Gasps filled the room. Karen's composure cracked. That's not true, she snapped. He's just bitter. He doesn't want to follow the rules. I took another step closer. You've been threatening innocent people. You nearly got Tamara evicted with fake fines. You filed false reports with the FBI. You think no one's going to hold you accountable? The tall officer beside her stepped forward, hand on his belt like he was armed. Sit down, agent, he barked. You're disrupting a community event. I raised my badge high. Touch me, and you'll be facing federal charges for impersonating law enforcement. The crowd started buzzing again, louder this time. A man in the front row stood up, frowning. Karen, is this true? Are they fake cops? Karen's face went pale. They're volunteers, she stammered. I nodded. Volunteers don't carry zip ties and threaten people with arrest. Another neighbor came forward, snatching one of Karen's citations off the table. This isn't real, she said. There's no HOA seal, no signature. Just a made-up ordinance number. Karen lunged to grab it back. That's confidential. But the damage was done. Phones came out everywhere, flashing, recording, capturing every word. Then, as if on cue, the community center doors opened. Alvarez walked in, uniform crisp, badge gleaming. The room went dead quiet. Evening, folks, he said, stepping up to the podium. We're conducting an investigation into unauthorized security operations and possible extortion in this neighborhood. Karen's face drained of color. You can't do this! You have no right. Alvarez gave a calm smile. Actually, ma'am, I do. We've traced multiple payments linked to your fake citations, and your so-called HOA police are connected to a defunct security company you registered under your own name. The crowd erupted. Gasps, murmurs, disbelief. Karen backed away, voice shaking. You don't understand. I was just trying to help the neighborhood. Alvarez held up a document. You're under arrest for fraud, impersonation, and harassment. One of the fake officers bolted for the door, but another neighbor blocked his path. Alvarez's backup moved in, cuffing both of them. Karen stumbled, tears brimming. You don't know who my family is, she cried. Alvarez's expression didn't change. Actually, we do. And that's why we made sure the warrant came from outside the bureau. That line hit her like a bullet. Her power, her protection gone. He cuffed her hands and led her out while the neighbors whispered and filmed. When it was over, the tension broke like a dam. Tamara came up to me, eyes shining. You did it, she whispered. You actually did it. I exhaled shakily, the weight finally lifting off my chest. A few neighbors approached to apologize, admitting they'd been too scared to speak up. I didn't blame them. Fear had ruled this neighborhood for too long. The next few weeks were chaos. Statements, reports, follow-ups, internal affairs cleared me completely once the truth came out. The real HOA was reinstated. Karen's fake organization was dissolved. Investigators found she'd pocketed thousands of dollars in fines from terrified residents. As for her uncle, the deputy director, he claimed he knew nothing. But the scandal forced him into early retirement. Karen herself faced multiple charges: fraud, extortion, impersonation of law enforcement. Her perfect suburban empire had crumbled. Overnight, 1 month later, I walked into my boss's office. He looked up from his desk and gave me a rare, genuine smile. "Turns out you were right all along," he said. "Internal affairs cleared you completely. The neighbors who filed complaints have officially retracted their statements." I nodded slowly. "So it's over," he chuckled. "For you?" "Yeah. For Karen? Not even close." That earned a small smile from me. Guess that's justice. As I left his office, the familiar hum of the bureau felt different, lighter. The cloud hanging over me for weeks had finally lifted. When I got home that evening, the street looked peaceful again. No fake patrol cars, no threats, no whispered rumors, just quiet. Tamara waved from her porch. Kids rode bikes again. For the first time in months, the neighborhood felt alive, like it had woken from a nightmare. I leaned on my fence, breathing in the evening air. Karen had tried to turn this place into her own kingdom, but in the end, she built her empire on lies, and lies always fall. Weeks later, I got one last envelope in the mail. No return address. Just my name. Inside was a single note. "You may have won this round, Agent, but every neighborhood has its secrets." I stared at it for a long time, then smiled faintly. Maybe it was just someone trying to scare me again, or maybe Karen wasn't the only one who'd been pulling strings. Either way, I'd be ready, because some battles start with flashing lights and gunfire, and others start with a knock at the door.